although people feared the effects of the bomb and what the Russians might do, they had a very strong patriotic feeling that we could protect our own nation.
Our country and all its people could be in danger of nuclear attack in hours by enemy aircraft.
The Nevada test site was first created in 1950 within the existing Las Vegas bombing and gunnery range.
It's sort of a backyard workshop, the most unusual scientific workshop in the world. 640 square miles of desert and mountains, 65 miles northwest from Las Vegas, set in some of the loneliest acres the world has ever seen. This barren region is not barren of brains. Some of the outstanding minds of the nation work in this sprawling outdoor laboratory.
On the day of an experimental explosion, the excitement in the air is evident at the first sentry post.
We're standing at the benches about a mile north of Mercury, Nevada. A lot of the workers would come here to witness an atmospheric shot at about 4:30 in the morning.
Put on your goggles. Observers without goggles must face away from the blast.
You're looking at 6 miles behind me down into the valley where the atmospheric test would be dropped out of an airplane, or it could be on a tower between 300 and 500 feet, or it could have been on a balloon. Of course, you will feel the heat and you will feel the shock wave here. It was a great opportunity to sit at these benches and watch an atmospheric shot.
Everything that was taking place at the Nevada test site required a security officer watching and controlling it. I was working the Smoky shot. That was a 750-foot tower with an atomic bomb in that tower cab. The bomb itself would be covered with lead to keep radiation contained. Many's the time, there's a lot of hours that not really much to do. You're going to sit down and have your lunch or whatever. So it wasn't unusual to sit down on an atomic bomb and have lunch. It was just one of those things that we didn't think anything about. We just did it. It was just part of the day's work.
There was a lot of concern about what would happen to the commercial world, the residential world, if, for heaven forbid, we got into a nuclear war.
We begin with the question of shelter. For shelter might save our lives if we were far enough away from ground zero. If so, what kinds of shelter are effective?
So in 1955, they actually built several houses of different types, different materials, and they wanted to understand what would be the effect of a nuclear device exploding.
Household furnishings were installed in the houses. Mannequin families supplied by private industry are to represent Mr. and Mrs. America.
We had all the mannequins in various positions in the house, sitting at the table, sitting at the lounge chairs, had lots of food, we had refrigerators in here, just like a normal home. I was in the trench up to almost my shoulders, and when I saw the dust coming at me, I just buckled my knees and got my head down below the surface of the ground.
And I remember in the little foxhole next to mine, they said the sons of bitches are trying to kill us off. I could see the bones in both hands. I couldn't believe it. It made you feel like the world was coming to an end. That's what I felt like. You could see the mushroom cloud right above us. And I can remember I had blood running out of both ears, out of both nostrils, and everybody was scared to death. It wasn't just me, it was everyone. And they marched us out, and they had a guy standing there with a broom. They were brushing us off because we were covered with radioactive material. They knew that stuff was harmful, and they wanted to minimize the impact from it as much as possible.
You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. Too much love drives a man insane. You broke my will, but what a thrill. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. I let you love what I thought it was fine. You came along and woo, now honey, I changed my mind. This world is fine. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire.
By now, the streets are almost deserted.
Las Vegas was a marvelous town at that time. People came to know more about the test site. They wanted to be here when they had a shot.
It was a tourist attraction. It's a funny thing to say. People would come out and they would want to witness a shot if they could.
So it was right before daybreak when the shots would occur. The sun would come up and you would see the mushroom cloud.
Las Vegas is the first American city to come under the glow of the atomic age.
And the famous photograph from Life magazine of downtown Las Vegas with a mushroom cloud in the background, that's a good example of what you would see in Las Vegas. It was a marketing ploy to tell people that you can see an atomic bomb. Although testing is in a moratorium, people make it almost a pilgrimage to stop by there. I think that they believe that the test site and the people who worked there won the Cold War.
A giant of limitless power at man's command. And where was it science found that giant? In the atom.
17 minutes past the first alert, Clarence Phillips is a very frightened man.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt this program to bring you important news. The residue from this morning's atomic detonation is drifting in the direction of St. George.
If you were driving from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City on U.S. Highway 91, you'd pass through St. George, Utah. It's pre-dawn. Since the rest of the town was sound asleep, only our night owl saw it, that great flash in the western sky. An atomic bomb at the Nevada test site 140 miles to the west.
I only remember seeing one test as a child. And I remember it because I thought it was a flying saucer. This big ball, red flame came up over the horizon. And I ran to the house to tell my mother there was a flying saucer. Most of the people in the community were happy to be a part of it. They were very patriotic and thought that this little tidbit of history was happening in their backyard.
This public information program informs the people in the vicinity of the test area of the objectives of the test project and its potential, probable, and actual hazards.
A lot of the people here in southern Utah would take their families up onto the highest bluffs when they knew there was a test going to happen and have picnics and watch it. People here really didn't believe it was harmful until things started to happen in the communities.
For the protection of the people in the vicinity, ground crews will monitor for radioactivity in adjacent communities.
The potential problems associated with fallout and then subsequent uptake in livestock and in people was not clearly understood.
There were people then that were concerned about public safety and did their best at monitoring the radioactivity levels and sampling the environment and taking protective actions, should that be necessary.
When I got just a little bit older in my childhood, I remember thinking during lambing season that it was normal to have piles of dead lambs with 2 heads or no legs, or just piles of dead baby lambs. People started to get sick. I had a couple classmates that died of leukemia and bone cancer. It was just horrible time in our lives. It was horrible. There were about 3 years there. I can't even pinpoint an event in my life. I was just putting one foot in front of the other.
It was very clear that it was having a harmful impact on people. And that's why atmospheric testing was stopped.
A lot of the freedoms that we see today are a result of the fact that we are a nuclear weapon state, and if we had to use them, we would use them. I often wonder about the exposures that people were exposed to. One of the things you have to understand is there's this natural incidence of cancer. Given the data that we have today, in my own mind, with the kind of levels that I saw, I disagree with some of the things that I hear today and with this compensation program.
Maybe they protected us, I don't know, but I will never believe that it was a positive thing for us ever. Nobody could ever convince me, but you could probably never convince those people either that it wasn't important. They have to justify what they did. They have to live with what they did.
I'm proud for having been able to participate in the programs. I clearly recognize the deficiencies that had existed and the steep learning curve that went on. The downside is, what other option did we have?